US President Donald Trump has increased global tariffs to 15%. The new import tax is the maximum allowed by law, but will require congressional approval to continue past 150 days.
It comes a day after the Supreme Court struck down President Trump's tariff regime, ruling he didn't have the authority to impose them using emergency powers. Journalist Jay Newtown-Small joins me now for more. A very good morning to you.
Morning.
So 10% yesterday, 15% this morning we're waking up to. What's the reaction been where you are?
Well, there's actually just been a lot of confusion. So there's about $133 billion in tariffs that the federal government has already collected. And there's a lot of confusion about, do companies now get this money back, having paid these tariffs? Do states get the money back? Nevada, one of the bordering states where I am in New Mexico, has actually asked for $2.1 billion in tariffs back already. They were one of 12 states that sued the federal government to stop the tariffs and to return the money. So this is a lot of money, $133 billion, and there's about $3 trillion at stake over a decade if the tariffs remain in place.
Gavin Newsom, California governor, another one calling for the immediate repayment of these tariffs. It's all very well and good to stand up and ask for that, but the amount of time that it might take to claw these back, we're not talking months, we're talking years and years, aren't we?
It is. It's just, I mean, as many people yesterday described the situation as just messy. It's going to take a long time to figure out, how do you claw these back? How do you send these back? Do you send people checks? I mean, who's entitled to these checks? If you reinstate the tariffs at 10% or 15%, do those then, what happens to the lapse in the period of the days in between? And then also what happens when these tariffs again get challenged? Because essentially what the Supreme Court says is that it's not within the executive office's power to impose these tariffs. It's only within the power of Congress, according to the Constitution. So he needs Congress to sign on to these tariffs. And if Congress doesn't, are these tariffs wholly just non-constitutional? Because they're obviously going to get challenged again.
Yeah, so that's interesting, because the mechanism under which these new tariffs will be implemented is through Section 122 of the Trade Act. In the last 24 hours, has there been much discussion about how legally watertight these may be?
There's been a lot of discussion about this, not only in Washington, but across the country, and I'm sure in capitals around the world. How legal is this? Do we respect them? Do we pay them? A lot of companies in America are wondering, how does this work? And is it okay to pay these tariffs, or should we be paying these tariffs when our state governments are saying, for example, that you shouldn't be paying these tariffs are illegal, when Congress potentially could come out, and there are members of Congress in the last 24 hours that have come out and said that this is correct, that it is only within the power of Congress to do this taxation. And it's been members of the president's own party who have said this. And so it really throws the entire thing into legal limbo to know who you're going to listen to on this, and who you should respect, and who you should actually, set your business by, which makes the entire thing very, very uncertain for businesses.
Yeah, and as we've seen, stock markets, global stock markets around the world seesaw up and down, as do commodity prices, etc. So why wouldn't President Trump take this to Congress, given he has that slim majority?
Well, slim is the right word for it. It's just too slim of a majority right now to get anything done. They can't even agree to open the government, frankly. We're in the middle of yet another government shutdown. It's a partial shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security because of arguments over the funding of immigration and customs enforcement. And so the idea that that you're going to get this through Congress is really, really tough when you have members of the president's own party saying this power does actually reside with Congress. And a lot of members of his own party don't support these tariffs. For example, the American Farm Bureau is strongly against these tariffs. So a lot of farming states have come out against these tariffs, saying that they're very damaging to farmers, and the money that the administration has given to farmers in order to sort of make amends for this isn't enough. It's really hurting farmers. And so I think it's very complicated to get something like this through Congress, and he just doesn't have the juice to do that right now. So the only way that he can ensure that this very central piece of his economic policy platform is enacted is really through this executive orders that he's been trying to do. And now that it's been struck down by the Supreme Court, this second executive order remains very much in limbo, and it's a really big question to see how and if this can actually go through.
So the new conditions are the 150 days. How likely is it that if they're instated, it only lasts for 150 days? What is the process for having that extended?
Well, so Trump says that he wants to use these tariffs as really a cudgel to reimagine all of the United States' trading agreements that they have. That there's a feeling amongst the Trump administration that these trade agreements were very unfair to Americans, and that all of them need to be renegotiated. That America needs to reestablish itself in the world in a better way, in stronger footing, I guess, both with both its allies and in some cases its adversaries as we trade with them. And so. In order to really reestablish that, you're going to have to redo trade negotiations or trade treaties with every country in the world that you've imposed these tariffs on. Some of them have already been done for Britain, for example, but for the rest of 200 plus countries, it's still an ongoing process. That's not going to be done in 150 days.
Yeah. Just finally, I mean, these trade agreements that were struck, and the tariffs, they haven't been uniform in the past, as you just alluded to. I mean, Australia has had a 10% flat fee, but you look at China, it's much higher. How likely is it that in the future we will see these trade-specific country deals, or what about product-specific deals?
That's another big question, is that there has been probably more movement on product deals in the last few months than there has been on trade, country specific deals. In the beginning, you may remember Trump promising that I'm going to rewrite all these things and we're going to have 30 new deals in like 30 days. And of course, that did not happen. These deals are really complicated to do. They take a lot longer than 30 days. What you have seen is many countries sort of signing memos of understanding, sort of saying, here's the deal that we're thinking of down the road, but very few of them have actually been fully solidified and enacted into law in both countries. But what has seen a lot more movement is sort of looking at specific products where you might form a deal with a group of different countries, and potentially that might see more movement. But then the big question is, with this, cudgel where you have only 10% or 50% blanket that you can do, how do you then sort of carve out products from that? And that remains a big question to be seen.